creators have done it, but fuck it. Yeah, I got it from Tarek. You see Jeff Nipper talking about what works for burning fat and what doesn't? He says sneaking and cardio here and there is a pretty good strat. Yeah, it is. The irony is, like, a lot of people that are jittery even, it's like one other form of, like, consistent fat burning. Jittery people will oftentimes have higher, faster rates of metabolism.
The United States is fucking ugly. Sure, we have mountains and beautiful national parks and amber waves of grain, etc., but the majority of Americans, 52% of them, live in places that look like this. Or this. Or this.
I see nothing wrong with that. That looks awesome. This person is woke. There are no other streamers, only Turks. True.
From Fresno to Newark and everywhere in between, the collective American experience is one of driving for miles and miles down concrete highways past strip malls, shopping centers, and acres of parking lots. These photos
ugly as fuck. Wait, that's my town. Yeah, the irony, of course, is that every single photo that she showed could quite literally be pretty much every single city in the United States of America. And I mean every single one, including Los Angeles. Obviously, there are certain cultural landmarks and whatnot that that make up the culture and identity of one American city in the heartland versus another American city in a bi-coastal place. However, most of the cities literally have exactly this aesthetic. Now, this is my kind of content. I'm the king of finding what looks good in bad places. Yeah, this is like a geoguesser's wet dream.
Photos could be anywhere in the United States. Is this Illinois? Is this Ohio? Is this Connecticut? Upstate New York? Who's to say? Day after day, year after year, the majority of Americans spend their time driving in their cars down highways that look like this. But it wasn't always like this, and it didn't have to be this way. Once an idyllic escape from the bustle of the city reserved only for the richest Americans, the suburbs became the symbol of upward mobility and the American dream. And thanks to lobbying, money, good PR, and you guessed it, a hell of a lot of racism, the American suburbs were slowly built into what you see today. Ugly spaces that make cars essential, walking impossible, and everyone miserable. This is why America is so freaking ugly. Roll the intro. You know who loves the suburbs, though? Serial killers. Am I right? I'm excited for today's sponsor, HasanPiker. HasanPiker is the adult board game company that creates immersive murder mystery games. There's Suburb was perceived on Target or Walmart to get your own immersive murder mystery game today. Thanks again to HasanPiker for sponsoring this video. In the late 19th and early 20th century, the concept of the suburbs emerged as a result of the Industrial Revolution's rapid urbanization. At that time, the suburb was perceived as an escape from the chaotic, crowded, and often unsanitary
black people. And also, oh well, I guess technically it wasn't just black people, it was like Italians. And also, I guess, Jewish people. And who else? You know, the Irish. Does Kaya have fleas? Yeah, definitely. Oh, man, she's just itchy. And Polish people.
conditions of urban life. They were primarily accessible to the wealthy city inhabitants who could afford to maintain two residences or travel regularly between their suburban homes and their places of business in the city. The suburbs offered space, fresh air, and an idyllic pastoral landscape, reminiscent of the English countryside, which was highly idealized in American culture at the time. These settings were presented as a healthier and safer environment for raising families away from the vices and dangers of the city. The original suburbanites, who were the affluent city dwellers, considered their suburban homes as a refuge from the hustle and bustle of the city, a place for recreation and leisure. The suburban houses of this era were often large, detached, and set on spacious plots of land, reflecting the wealth and social status of their owners. They were not yet a part of mass-produced housing schemes. Each one was unique, designed by an architect, and often full of ornate, fashionable details. This was the image of the suburb as a prosperous, serene, and exclusive place. However, this vision of the suburbs dramatically transformed in the United States following the end of World War II with the passage of the GI Bill in 1944, which provided a range of benefits to returning veterans, including low-cost mortgages. This, coupled with the economic boom and the growth of the middle class, facilitated a massive wave of suburbanization, marking the beginning of the era of the mass suburb. While the GI Bill provided a range of benefits to returning World War II veterans, including low-cost mortgages, job training, and college tuition, the implementation of these benefits was not equitable across racial lines. Though the legislation itself didn't explicitly differentiate benefits based on race, in practice, the distribution of its benefits was largely influenced by social and institutional racism. The GI Bill worked in tandem with existing racially discriminating housing and lending practices such as redlining and restrictive covenants, which effectively excluded Black veterans from enjoying the same opportunities for homeownership as their white counterparts. Redlining was a discriminatory practice where lenders would designate neighborhoods with a high percentage of Black people as high-risk areas for mortgage lending. These areas were often outlined in red on maps used by banks and other lending institutions, hence the term redlining. This led to a systemic denial of home loans or insurance to people based on the racial or ethnic composition of their neighborhoods. Moreover, the Federal Housing Administration, or FHA, and the Veterans Administration regularly refused to insure home loans for Black people, both veterans and non-veterans, and were complicit in sustaining racially segregated neighborhoods. Even when Black veterans could secure a loan, they were often steered away from white suburban neighborhoods and instead directed toward urban areas. Suburban developers, like those who built Levittown, often included restrictive covenants in property deeds, explicitly barring people of color from buying homes in these areas. For example, the original contract for homes in Levittown included a clause that the homes could not be used or occupied by any person other than members of the Caucasian race. This combination of systemic racism and discriminatory practices meant that Black veterans were largely excluded from the homeownership boom and the creation of the post-war middle class, a significant aspect of.
So let me explain something to you guys, right? So obviously, there's plenty of books that have been written on the subject matter, and plenty of evidence that this was a very successful form of systemic discrimination. And yet, you know, Ben Shapiro and his kind, conservative monsters, will regularly say, well, point to me where the law is racist and I'll stop it. Now, this is technically outside of the bounds of law, right? It's still a code. It's still a code of conduct, and it's completely not permissible, right? And completely unacceptable by today's standards and even yesterday's standards as well. However, Ben Shapiro would consider this to be technically racist. How does Ben Shapiro defend this? I'm using my lecture tone here. How does Hasan gets a dog, keeps it in a child's play area all day for content. Dogs are not supposed to be locked up all day without exercise of some sort, especially when they're a puppy. This dog gets more exercise than your fat ass does every fucking day. Not only does she get to literally be around her owner, her favorite person on the planet, but also she literally sleeps for the most part during the day, and the times where she's not on camera, she's both sprinting, fetching, going on long walks, socializing with other dogs, and doing literally more exercise than the average fucking dog does on a daily basis. The only dog that would be in a better situation overall than mine would be like a working dog that's just out in a fucking farm, okay? Out and about in a farm, running, letting it loose. Beyond that, as far as a domesticated pet that is living in a big city, this dog literally lives a better life than you do as a human being. So I never want to hear this kind of nonsensical bullshit ever again. Unless you are the type of person who thinks movies are real and have no object permanence and believe that in between the time period where I press the stop streaming button and then press the start streaming button, nothing happens on the planet. Nothing happens in my life. I am just a figment of your imagination, one that is so emotionally and intellectually stunted that you cannot comprehend a world outside of what you are seeing on camera. You can't fucking turn around and say, dude, you're weird, when you say a gross statement that is so far from the truth that literally, virtually every single person in this chat is laughing at you. You can't turn around and go, dude, you're weird, for giving me the dignity of a response like I'm a normal human being and not a mentally stunted baby. I'm weird because I take you seriously like you're a real human being. That is my oddity.
Of the idyllic vision of the American dream. This had a long-lasting impact, contributing to the racial wealth gap and patterns of racial segregation that persist in the US today. This, of course, wasn't the only tool in racist tool belts throughout the 20th century. Exclusionary zoning, as it has been used in the United
States. Oh, I forgot. Sorry. We had a lecture moment here. Do you think... how does Ben Shapiro defend this? Flex those creative juices, chatters. Don't Google it. And explain it to me. Well, I'll tell you. I don't know why I acted like someone was going to write it in time. Ben Shapiro will defend it by saying redlining is actually not as horrific, as horrifying as the American woke intellectuals will have you believe. It's actually a consequence of blacks not being able to pay their loans. Of course, a bank, a private institution, is going to want to make sure that someone can pay back their loans. This is the reason why banks were reluctant to offer loans to black neighborhoods. That's it. That's how he defends it. So the reason why I'm mentioning this, why did I explain all this? Because conservatives are not in it in a serious way. They're not genuinely interested in having an argument or arriving at the truth. They're simply interested in defending their reactionary position. And Ben Shapiro is very good at trying to defend a inherently reactionary, oftentimes very racist position with a little bit of intellectual patina. Okay? How does he do that? By giving you some academic language seasoned around what the fucking actual racist bankers were saying when they designed this goddamn structure to begin with.
United States refers to local zone.
Here it is. All right, I'm doing Ben Shapiro. Someone sent Owl who tries to say, oh, it's just welfare policies. It's not. It's not welfare that has destroyed the nuclear family. It's actually systemic racism. There's a video on this, yes, debunked Ben Shapiro's attacks on systemic racism. It's 32 minutes long. This also famously ends with, just leave, the PlayStation event video.
Zoning ordinances that effectively limit the availability of affordable housing, thereby segregating communities by income and often by race. This type of zoning practice was utilized extensively in the early 20th century as a means to segregate neighborhoods, especially in the wake of the 1917 Supreme Court decision Buchanan v. Worley, which ruled municipal ordinances mandating residential racial segregation were unconstitutional. Exclusionary zoning practices often involved rules that mandated large lot sizes.
I am decreasing the audio on the video so I can increase the audio on my microphone by having you guys increase it. Shut the fuck up. I know the mic is quiet. I'm adjusting. Please stop. Audrey3, thank you for the 25
minimums, prohibitions on multifamily housing, and other restrictions that essentially made it impossible for lower-income families to live in certain areas. These practices were often implemented under the guise of maintaining neighborhood character, property values, or public health, but they frequently served to exclude racial and ethnic minorities who were disproportionately low income due to broader systemic inequalities. For example, a town might impose a regulation stating that homes must be built on a minimum lot size, let's say 1 acre. This would effectively raise the price of all new homes in that area, making it unaffordable for low-income families. Because of systemic racial disparities in income and wealth, these zoning regulations had a disproportionately exclusionary impact on communities of color, effectively relegating people of color to the cities while white people left for the economic promise of home ownership, something black people were systematically excluded from. This rapid expansion led to another issue: transportation. As more and more houses were built, the suburbs had to continue expanding outward to find space for more and more lots. But the people living in the suburbs continued to work and commute in the cities. What's the solution?
This is how the suburbs destroyed the cities, because the cities originally were built not with a car-reliant infrastructure in mind, but the cities were originally built with trams, the cities were originally built for public transit, and mostly walkable.
High-speed rail and incredibly efficient mass transit? No, dummy, cars. Obviously. But it wasn't obvious. The obsession with and reliance on cars that seems uniquely American was manufactured as not a symptom, but a feature of the suburbs. The popularity of the car had major implications for city planning. Urban areas began to be designed around the car, leading to the creation of broader streets, parking lots, and garages. This auto-centric design sometimes came at the expense.
One other fun aspect of a car-centric, car-reliant infrastructure was, and I've said this before, white people are so fucking creative when they're doing racism. Like, they've beefed up their creativity points so that they've maxed it out when it comes to just not being around black people, systemically excluding them, stopping them from advancing. So here's another thing that they did. Not only did they create this car-reliant infrastructure, not only did they start paving larger roads, breaking down buildings, making the roads wider, eliminating sidewalk space, eliminating walkable streets altogether, they then used highways to quite literally physically stop black people from being able to walk to areas where white people live. They doubled down on it. They were like, oh, we got to put fucking highways here. Where can we put it? Either directly on top of a black neighborhood or around a black neighborhood so that they just can't even fucking leave the neighborhood as easily as possible.
Expensive pedestrian-friendly spaces and public.
But for the record, that's how you arrive at questions, dumbass questions that conservatives like Matt Walsh love weaponizing. It's called weaponizing idiocy. Where they go, Hasan, you're so woke. What's next? Are you going to say highways are racist? Yeah, I am. I am going to say that. Everything in America was designed with a racist attitude in mind, okay?
Public transportation often took a back seat. Moreover, in some cases, vibrant neighborhoods, usually populated by people of color, were divided or demolished to make way for highways and roads leading out to the suburbs. The Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956 authorized the construction of a national highway system in the United States. The idea was to facilitate efficient interstate transport and ensure the capability for rapid military deployment in case of emergency. However, it also had a transformative effect on American society by further enabling suburbanization. These highways made it even easier for people to live in the suburbs and commute into the city, further contributing to the growth of suburbs. Additionally, as I said, highway construction often disproportionately affected minority communities. Urban highways were frequently routed through neighborhoods populated by racial and ethnic minorities, leading to displacement, community division, and other negative impacts. According to the Financial Times, broadly, U.S. transportation policy essentialized the automobile. Highways were considered the lubricant of efficiency by American political and business leaders, with other forms of transportation cast aside. Main streets throughout the country were turned over to cars, either with high-speed roadways or sprawling parking lots. Nimble streetcar networks were ripped up and replaced by slow-moving buses that joined the ever-growing traffic.
What's that Italian guy's TikTok that was going viral on Twitter? Does anyone have that? Where it's like, he puts like fertilizer in a coffee and goes, oh, it's so much better than espresso. Someone had to have seen it. We are no, not attenzione pickpocket. No, you weirdo. Wait, no. There's someone in here that saw it. We have to watch.